So it's
Hold on 1 second.
Oh, he's got the motion camera. Is it working? Go up. Oh, look at that. It's Bleav and Panthers on the Bleav Podcast Network. It's the one where Bryce gets benched, part 2. The whole gang is here. It's going to be a group therapy session, I think, today. It feels like, as I see people filtering into the congregation, they just let it out. We're going to talk about Bryce Young. It's open mailbag like it normally is here at Bleav and Panthers. Around the league, your biggest surprise 2-0 and 0-2 teams as we go through that. And we got some more comments from Dave Canales commenting on the team rallying around Andy Dalton as he begins the starting quarterback reign here in Carolina. My only question is, am I supposed to change the graphic here on the open for Bleav and Panthers? Because every time I put in a current player or anytime somebody current, I've had to change it like the past 4 years. It went from Christian McCaffrey,
Burns,
DJ Moore, Burns. We remedied that by putting Stu at the beginning of the audio.
This is the equivalent of the Madden curse.
Yeah, literally. Like, do I take Bryce out and just stick Stu's face there, or is there a player that I can put on here that won't get traded or cut, or is it Dave Canales? Do I put him there, or am I dooming him? I don't know. You guys tell us in the comments. It's Bleav and Panthers. Let's go.
Jonathan Stewart gets hit, fights for more yardage. Stewart to the mouth of the goal line. Touchdown! Wow, that's just pure Stewart right there.
That's a big time run by Jonathan Stewart.
Welcome to Bleav in Carolina Panthers here on Bleav Podcast Networks. Do you believe? Rate and subscribe the show on all major podcast platforms and subscribe to our social media channels on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Video available weekly at youtube.com/@Tobacco Road Sports Radio.
Do you believe?
And welcome into a brand new edition of the Bleav and Panthers podcast here on Bleav Podcast Networks. Desmond Johnson, Panthers beat writer Schuyler Callihan, and the Panthers all-time leading rusher Jonathan Stewart in the house. This is part 2 of the one where Bryce gets benched. If you're looking for part 1 that me and Stu did last night on the heels of the announcement from the Panthers that Bryce Young will be benched in favor of Andy Dalton, you can find that on all major podcast platforms. And the video is available at youtube.com/@Tobacco Road Sports Radio. Again, a loaded slate today. We'll go around the league, look at some of the 0-2 and 2-0 teams. It's open mailbag. So if you got comments or things you want to just kind of get out your chest, you can do so here in the comments on Facebook Watch and YouTube. Christopher Fox saying group therapy session. I think that's what's kind of going to end up being today, as people are starting to realize that, hey, maybe we got a new lease on the season. Maybe it's weird how one benching can kind of like turn around like an entire season 2 games in, but that's where we are here in Charlotte. So we'll get into all that as well, and much more. But before we do any of that, a quick word from our sponsors over at Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on an over $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head over to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online, the game starts here. And if you were with us last night, me and Stu kind of went through, it was a Bryce Young-centric episode. We didn't really dump on him. We didn't want to do that. We kind of went through the reasons why we think this may have happened. We all saw the tape. We've all seen these games. Like, it just looked like Bryce just wasn't ready to go. But it's pretty interesting that Dave Canales, I told Stu last night, I think this was really the first Dave Canales coaching move of his tenure here in Carolina. But it was definitively like a Dave Canales type decision. And we liked the way that he did it in terms of methodically coming to the conclusion that Bryce needed to be sat. Schuyler, I'll let you go first because you weren't with us yesterday. Give us your thoughts, because I assume you're in the building for some of this stuff when Dave was talking yesterday to the media, and just how this went down since the game ended on Sunday. I'm sure you were at the stadium. Stu was as well on Sunday. It didn't look like a good time. Just walk us through what you've been hearing and everything else from the end of Sunday to yesterday's announcement.
Hold on. I want to start this by saying, Schuyler, you kind of said this was going to happen.
Yeah, you did. We mentioned it last night.
So,
kind of nailed it.
I don't know what kind of voodoo magic you working on over there, but you kind of called it last week, and if people would tune in to our podcast more, they wouldn't be so surprised. With
Yeah, there you go.
But
Thank you, Stu.
continue.
I'm a little shocked. I'm shocked at the timing of it, and I just don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense. And I get he played bad. He's looked bad these first 2 games. Before we jumped on air, I said that was his worst game by far, and it was not even close. But I just don't know that removing him 2 weeks into the season is going to do anything for this team. And I get there's the argument that, well, you can't evaluate the rest of the roster, and I understand that. But the most important part of your roster is the quarterback position. That's the one you need to figure out. And this is why I said a week ago that they should have gone into this season with Andy Dalton as the starter for 3-4 games max and said, Bryce, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get you caught up to speed. We're going to get to the point where you feel comfortable while Andy holds it over. And this is going to be like your rookie season 2.0. We're going to do it right. And they missed out on that opportunity. Now, I think they're pivoting and realizing that maybe that's what we should have done. And now I don't know if you can get that confidence back after you've been removed as a starter. Quarterback is a fragile position because there's only one spot. I'm not saying that Bryce is fragile or quarterbacks in general are mentally. It's just there's a lot at stake on the line. There's only one guy on the field at that on 32 teams. So you're not like a wide receiver where there's 5 or 6 different spots. You have a chance to be one of them. It's one of one. But I'm going to go in, and I told you guys on this. This is a macro problem. I'm not sitting here and saying that Bryce would have been perfect or that he would have panned out. There's a chance he still could. Whether it's here or not, I don't know. History tells me it'll be somewhere else. But if you go back to just when I started covering the team in 2020, I have it perfectly broken down right here for you. All of the stuff that has happened. This is what I mean when you put a quarterback in a position where there's no stability. Just listen to this. 2020, and it gets worse as the years go on, by the way.
Hold on, let me go on just before you even, because I feel it building already.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you why we mad, son.
My blood pressure's going sky high.
I was just going to rip it off.
Yeah, just go ahead.
2020, you hire Matt Rule and you bring in Teddy Bridgewater. That's basically all that happened in 2020. Obviously, there was some stuff there that, he reached the ball over the goal line, whatever. That was about it.
Yeah.
2021, you say, Teddy wasn't good enough. We're going to trade for Sam Darnold. So you give up a 2nd, 4th, and a 6th round pick to bring Sam Darnold in. Then you also bring in Cam Newton later that year because Darnold gets hurt and wasn't really playing the best anyways. You fire Joe Brady. You then name Jeff Nixon the interim OC.
Damn.
That's just in 2021.
Yeah.
2022, you hire Ben McAdoo as your offensive coordinator. You draft Matt Corral. You traded up to draft Matt Corral, I should say. You then later in the summer trade for Baker Mayfield, fire Matt Rule a month or so into the season, name Steve Wilkes your interim head coach, and at the trade deadline, you trade Christian McCaffrey.
For peanuts, basically.
Last year, you hire Frank Reich. He lasts all of 11 games. You traded DJ Moore in the offseason. You drafted Bryce Young. Traded all that stuff to get Bryce Young. Signed Andy Dalton. You also fired Frank Reich, like I said. Named Tabor the interim head coach. 2024. We've already got 5 bullet points here, and this is only
this week 3.
in 20. Now, part of this was before the season, obviously, but you fired Scott Fitterer. You hired Dan Morgan as the GM. You hired Dave Canales. You traded Brian Burns, and you benched Bryce 2 games in. There is so much. Well, actually, before I get into this, the last thing on Bryce, and Jeff Saturday brought this up, and this was a tremendous point. Bryce Young, since he's been with the Panthers, has played 11 games with Frank Reich, 6 games with Chris Tabor, 2 games with Dave Canales. And then I added a little onto this. Last year's rookie had 12 starting offensive line combinations. 12. and he had to learn basically 2 different guys calling it last year. Now he's learning a third. While I just went through all that, the biggest thing here is stability. There's zero stability within this organization from top to bottom. And I'm not trying to call any one single person out. But when there is constant changes on the field, on the sideline, and the front office, you're not going to have success. I don't care who you are. You could be the Dallas Cowboys. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
You put Bryce in a very tough situation. He had to learn 3 offensive systems in a matter of a year and a half. Had a whole new offensive line, basically, at least in the interior. Has new weapons, new coaching staff. I mean, this is a lot for a kid to come in. And we're talking about the kid that was touted by everybody as the best quarterback in the class and was an elite processor. The best of the best are still going to struggle with this type of situation.
He's a completely different player. Like,
Yes.
I was watching film of him at Alabama because I was like, where's this coming from? Because he never looked like this. And it's a confidence thing. Like, literally, we have
1,000%.
We just beaten it out of him. Like, and he's just, even at the podium, he just looks like
he's kind of
California
confused.
is gone.
It's an unfamiliar feeling.
Yes,
because
he's
all
never been here.
he has done is win and be
Now-
successful.
Now,
And the last point I want to make here is you look at Baker and Sam and what they've been doing ever since they've left. Really, for Sam, just these first few weeks. But like I said last week on the show, at some point, you got to stop blaming the other person or your girlfriend or whoever it is and saying that it's always the girlfriend that's the toxic issue. Sometimes you got to look in the mirror and say, you know what? Damn, it might be me.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to figure some things out. Let it settle. And I don't know that they can save Bryce in Carolina. Can Bryce be saved somewhere else? Absolutely. We've seen it happen with Baker and Sam. But I don't know that you can do it here because there's no stability here. Until you find stability, it's going to be the same damn thing no matter who you bring in, a head coach, GM, quarterback.
So I want to push back on that slowly because just the end part of it, because I do agree there hasn't been stability since 2020, but wouldn't you say, or shouldn't we see if the beginning of the stability was Tepper hiring Canales and Morgan and kind of, it feels like for the most part, he stepped out of the way. Like I know people.
Here's where it all goes back to is the Frank Reich hire.
Yeah.
Because that's where the coaching staff and the GM that drafted Bryce Young. If you don't get that hire wrong, none of this happens. So I'm not saying Frank was the right or wrong choice, but if he would have nailed, or the Panthers would have nailed that coaching hire, we wouldn't have any of this conversation right now.
Well, there's many people, remember, that think that Reich didn't want Bryce, that he wanted CJ Stroud and that he got overruled.
Right.
And that just set the tension from that point on.
And
you're given something you didn't even want and you got to figure out how to work with it and you don't know how. And then it just snowballed and you got, all
exactly.
that stuff happened last year.
That's what I'm saying. That. If you bring in the right coach who doesn't have, this all-star coaching staff from all these different backgrounds and philosophies, and you have a guy he's the guy and this is what they're going to do, then we're probably not talking about a coach that lasted 11 games, and we're not talking about another head coach in year 2 with Bryce Young.
So basically, if we had hired Jim Harbaugh 2 years ago, none of this.
Well, or whoever. But last thing, and I'll shut up for a while because I want to hear you guys talk. The whole Dave Canales made this decision thing. I don't know. I seriously don't. And I don't know that anybody does. He was very close to the vest yesterday in his press conference, didn't want to reveal any conversations, and I understand. But with all of that I just listed off to you, it just sounds fishy to me. Something sounds fishy. I don't know if it's Tepper, Morgan, Canales, mix. I don't know. I'm not putting blame anywhere because I'm not the type of person to do that unless I have evidence. But what I'm saying is since 2020, there has been a constant search of we've got to get the next guy. We got to get the next guy, whether it's coach, quarterback, GM, and you're not giving them time. We're 2 games into this. Dave Canales came here to help Bryce out. Why are we removing and going back on that 2 games into the season? So I don't know. He may be saying it was his decision. I'm just saying it smells fishy.
Okay, so this perfect segue into what me and Stu were talking about last night in Park One, where from Canales' press conference where he was describing this, he kind of explained his mythology, how he got to this point. And he mentioned that he spoke to I thought it was really interesting that he spoke to Brant Tillis and Dave Morgan about this, because to me, him saying he spoke to Brant, that tells me that they looked at it from all angles, like, does this cost the team if we don't play him? Like, is this contract situated where he has to play a certain amount of time and that kind of thing? So he went to every single spot he needed to make that decision, I guess. And I have to assume David and Nicole Tepper were probably involved in that. And I don't think it was so much that they had to play Bryce. I think he just did the due diligence and then went to Tepper and was like, look, we feel like we've built a roster that can compete like this year. And you have not had a competitive team since you bought the team. And to do that, we need better quarterback play. Bryce is not going to be able to get there with live bullets this year. Let's sit him. We have Andy Dalton. He's a division winner. He's won multiple places he's been. There's 23 new faces on this roster. It's not the same roster as last year. So, like, we don't know where they are in terms of how good they could potentially be. And there's 15 games left in the season. It's like, is it really going to hurt Bryce and his development if he sat right now and the plan is explained to him in terms of what their plans are for him? Now, it's different if they're not telling him.
They should have done that from the start.
They should have did it from the start. And Stu, you were saying this last night, that you like the fact that Canales was explaining why they did this, because players need to know what they're doing. Like, they need to know what do you want me to do this week? Like, their assignments or whatnot, instead of just being hung out there. And by him doing this on Monday, it assures the team that they know, okay, Andy is our quarterback. Bryce knows, okay, I'm going to grab this clipboard. I'm going to absorb and learn as much as I can. And it almost just refreshes the whole team. It feels like the whole team gets a second lease on a season that honestly was starting to slip away. Like, this early, I can't remember a Panther season, maybe 2001, the 1-15 season, where they won the first game and then lost the next 15. And it was a slow crumbling of, it was George Seifert's last year. And it was a slow crumbling of that whole regime and everything. Ended up getting Julius Peppers in the draft the next year, but I'll save that for Tell Em Why You're Mad. Stu, you had another night to sleep on it. Your thoughts on this going forward as we flip the page to Andy Dalton? Because I really kind of want to start talking about, how does this offense look with Andy Dalton running it as opposed to what we've seen with Bryce Young? I have to assume we'll take more than just a shot or two downfield. Well, we didn't take any on Sunday. I think there was only 2 passes that Bryce had that traveled further than 8 yards in the air. So Andy can sling it. Yeah, one was a pick. Yeah, so maybe there was 3. But Andy can sling it, and we've seen him. Last time we saw him in the Panthers uniform, he threw for over 300 yards and a loss against Seattle early in the year last year. So has your mind started to flip over to Andy yet, Stu? Or are you still kind of thinking about this whole scenario with Bryce?
First of all, I enjoyed hearing you, Schuyler, give your explanation and all of that. I think we have to look at this from the lens of, what is this game all about? Is it about winning hearts? Is it about being liked? Or is it about winning games? It's about winning games, cut and dry. No matter how you look at this, the National Football League is so cutthroat. And if we don't look at it from that point of view, we're selling ourselves short and we're getting our hopes up. The Carolina Panthers haven't been winning games. And you have a new regime that wants to create a winning culture. And I think right now we just have to, again, we've been saying this all year so far. You got to hit the reset button. Whatever happened in the past, in order for us to move forward, you have to hit that reset button. So everything that we're talking about, with Frank Reich, the hiring of Frank Reich and the letting go of Frank Reich, the hiring of Matt Rule and the letting go of Matt Rule, all those things absolutely have a part in where we are today. But this new regime comes in and basically hits the reset button because it has nothing to do with them. The decision-making process that they have to go through is not dictated by what's been done in the past. They have to look at this from the lens of what's happening now. And right now, we're not winning games. And we can't tell who's good and who's bad right now. because we're not giving ourselves an opportunity to see that on display. And so this is not a Bryce Young issue. This is a team-oriented issue. This is a how do we develop these players issue. If this is the way that this is going to go on for the next couple of games, the way the first 2 games have went, I don't want to see it. If I'm a new coach, right? If this is my job to make this organization a championship caliber team, I got to make the calls here. I don't know who made the call to bench Bryce, but clearly it was a decision that's been made, right? So let's make sure that we maximize this season to the best of our ability. We have a roster. We have an offensive line that can block. We have a running game that is shown. I mean, shoot, Chuba had over 5 yards per carry this past game. So the running game can be there if we dial it up.
Offensive line looks okay.
Now our defense, we got to help our defense out by staying on the field, point and blank. We know the deficiencies, of this team. And so in order for us to create a winning culture, we got to make sure we put ourselves in the best situation to do that. And yeah, I feel for Bryce, because you take a Michelin star chef, right? And you put him in the kitchen and you give him a spoon and you give him a match and you say, hey man, go out there and cook. Like, all right, I'll do my best. Right. But it's hard to do that with ingredients and the consistency of help. Right.
We didn't give him the proper pots and pans. Like he
Right.
didn't kitchen even in there.
but that's an obvious situation that, Canales and this new regime has walked into. And they did their best this offseason to start that process of giving him, the tools necessary. But what's happened is we've seen this young man and his confidence, fall. Last year he was used to getting beat up to where now he's not used to a pocket, a clean pocket. How do I maneuver in this? This is the NFL. I'm still getting used to moving in the pocket. How it's supposed to feel. Last year I got hit. I got sacked 60 plus times.
Yeah, that's gonna stay with you. Like,
right. So
yeah.
so for him, the first 2 games of the season, he's dealing with all that. Meanwhile, you have a new regime that's basically saying, hey, look, we're here to win games. Okay. Everybody has a job, and we don't want to have, the new cast, the new players on this roster that we brought in. We don't want to waste their time. Because if I'm a player, I wouldn't want to waste my time, especially if I'm in my 30s and late 20s, whatever it is. Like, I want to win games. I want to catch balls. I want to run for yards. I want to score touchdowns. I want to make tackles. I want to have, Victory Monday. Those are the things that I'm looking forward to. And if you're a coaching staff, you have players on this team in that locker room that deserve it and deserve at least a chance to experience that, right? So all that being said, we got Andy Dalton, right? Andy Dalton is on the roster for a reason. Guys are not just on the roster just in case someone gets injured. It's all about who is the best caliber player that can go out there and win some games. And right now, confidence, what level is Andy Dalton? You know why? Because he's experienced. He's experienced, and he's done this before. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, right?
Led Cincinnati to a division title, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So this guy has been there, and that's the reason why he's backing up Bryce Young for situations like this, right? So that way we can, hit a small reset button, maybe. Because from what I'm understanding is Andy Dalton gives us the best chance to win this Sunday. This isn't about the whole entire season. This is this Sunday, an opportunity to play this Sunday, because right now Bryce is experiencing some confidence issues. I still believe that Bryce Young can be a fantastic quarterback. Schuyler, you mentioned it. We mentioned it yesterday. You have Baker Mayfields, right? You have the Sam Darnolds, these quarterbacks that, have in ways become journeymen because they didn't walk into a program to be able to help them develop into the quarterbacks that they are now. The journey took Baker 6 years?
And a lot of
Is
stuff.
this his sixth year or seventh year?
Or
fifth? I don't know.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
Somewhere in that range, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it just takes, guys. You're looking at college right now, right? You have these college players that are basically playing in like a system that is basically, hey, we're going to hurry up and make you a pro quarterback, right? And because right now it's all about, hey, we need these wins and we need it now because we're paying y'all too much money, right? We need a return.
That's
now.
what it is.
We need an instant return right now. And every now and then you get a CJ Stroud, right?
Joe Burrow.
A Joe Burrow. But those don't come by those don't come by often. You get a Cam Newton, right? Cam Newton came into Carolina and he changed the whole entire culture.
Yeah, that never usually happens.
So that happens every blue moon.
Yeah.
And when you draft a guy number one, that's become the expectation because we've seen it happen. We've seen it happen here in the Carolinas. Carolina Panthers have existed for 30 years, right? And we've gone to 2 Super Bowls in 30 years.
Yep.
And you can look at some organizations that's never been to the Super Bowl.
I don't think we've ever had back-to-back winning seasons still to this day. Like even when y'all won the 3 division titles in a row, one of those was like 7-8-1. And then I think it was in the middle of it was 12-4 and then 7-8-1 and then the 15-1 season. So we still haven't had back-to-back winning seasons.
But we have won the division 3 times in a row.
Right, which we were the first ones to do that in the NFC South as well. I'm gonna go ahead and set this off.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you why we mad, son. I'm gonna tell you why we mad, son.
I circled around a lot of different things since Sunday where I wanted to land on this, and I think I finally decided where I wanted to go, especially after what happened yesterday. I'm at a segment of Carolina Panther fans, the ones that have just basically started looking at the draft already. Don't
do that.
Yeah,
Lord.
Let's look at these quarterbacks. Let's look at
right
this
there real quick because I'm gonna tell you, if you start looking at it, you're not gonna be happy. There's no quarterback in this class that I'm excited about.
I don't want Shedeur Sanders after seeing some of the stuff like this past Saturday. We didn't want to shake the quarterback's hand at midfield or whatever. I'm like, all right, you're a talent, but
that's bad juju.
Yeah, you got a little too much spice on you, Shedeur.
Throwing your line under the bus.
Yeah, throwing your lineman under the bus. I finally saw that clip that you mentioned last week, and it was like I don't know if he was intending it to be kind of like. No, he wasn't. He really wanted them to understand.
I will say, Shedeur, that he has time to develop and mature, right?
Right, he does.
I wouldn't just go out and say, "Oh, we're not going to draft a really good player because he's immature." Well, of course, he's in college.
He's 20.
He's still a kid. That goes again to what we were just talking about, right? These colleges and how we evaluate college players is like, hey. You're 20. You need to be a pro. You need to be an adult. You should be paying taxes while you're paying taxes because you have NIL money now, and
welcome to adulthood.
And you need to make sure that you're acting a certain way because if not, you're not playing. We're not drafting you. Listen, we get it. You're supposed. It comes with the territory, but what we need to figure out is how we're gonna create a program for these guys to actually develop as young men, right? Give them chances to mess up, give them chances to say the wrong things and learn from their mistakes, right? Because I've definitely done it. I just so happen to grow up without having a camera in my face all the time.
That's a different world now too. Yeah,
I've been at bars singing karaoke out of my mind because there was no cameras in my face. Would you see me doing it these days?
Bro, if they had cell phones in the 90s when I was in high school, this wouldn't.
Man, Jonathan is a great singer, but man, what is he up there? Why is his eyes rolling back in his head?
but no, that I thought about. I was like, you know what? That's what it's going to be because it's infuriating. We went through this whole off season. We're all excited about all these new faces. I just said half the roster is brand new. There's 23 new faces on this roster weren't here last year. They did everything we thought you needed to do to rebuild a team. They started with the interior offensive, defensive line. They got some separation in terms of wide receiver help. They had a plan. They knew what they wanted to do. And it looks like they still want to do the plan. It's just that they realize they can't do it with Bryce. I think they can do it with Andy Dalton. Like, I really do. Like, now it hurts that we don't have Derek Brown for these next 15 games. That hurts a lot because it feels like we can't tackle anybody. Like, it honestly feels like we didn't practice in pads like all of preseason because, like, I see him trying to tackle folks. Shaq bounced off a guy the other day. Like, they just bounced off. Like, it's weird watching him. And that was the other half of my Tell Him Why You're Mad, because I was thinking about this too.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you why we mad, son. I'm gonna tell you why we mad, son.
But of course, he's not the full ultimate problem. And I'm sitting there looking at the roster, right? And we talked about this, and Dan Morgan has talked about this, wanting dogs, right? Who are the dogs on this roster? Like, who are the vocal? Is JC Horn and
Shaq.
Who?
Shaq, Timo.
Is Shaq really that vocal? Is he a vocal guy like that? Yeah. Because I feel like there's no.
Yeah, Shaq is definitely a dog.
Okay. So he's like, okay. So it feels like previous Panther teams, when they're like really, really good, there's a vocal
littered all over the roster.
Yeah, there's dudes like offense and defensively that you just kind of, they're carrying that blueprint, that blood that that Panther DNA that Dan Morgan talked about. I know it's his first year bringing in stuff, but I'm watching these games, I don't feel that juice. Like, I don't know if that's because they're watching Bryce overthrow receivers and they're just like, ugh, or
Listen, I'm gonna tell you the dogs. Robert Hunt, dog.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Caleb
yeah,
Wilson,
I've heard him a couple times in interviews.
dog. Chuba Hubbard, dog. Like, you just gotta let your dogs eat.
Yeah, let them eat. And I think this is what this move is going to do. It's going to free up a lot. One domino falling is crazy, but I think it's going to open up. The defense is going to play better. The offense is going to play better because I think they're going to be out there longer, which will help the defense. They're not going to be gassed by halftime because they're out there because we're just doing 3 and outs every single time we go out. Like, literally, the defense played 3/4 of the game, it felt like, on Sunday. So I wasn't surprised that they couldn't get anything going because the Chargers were just running down their throat. Like, that's a what do you want to call it? That's just like a manhood type thing. Like, just like, we're going to run it down your throat, and you know what we're doing. We got 3 tackles over here on the right hand side. Like, you know where we're going. Like, yeah. we're going over here, and like, you guys stop.
I also will say Miles Sanders, dog. If you end up giving Miles Sanders at least 10 carries, you'll see a dog.
I want to see one of them.
You give Chuba 18 carries, we win a game.
Get them lathered up a little bit. And I think they couldn't do that because we couldn't move the chains, because we couldn't do simple things like complete a 3rd and 5 pass or whatever. And some of these pass combinations,
which some of that should change, right?
Yeah. I think the playbook will open up with Andy. Like, it will be going downfield a little bit more. Imagine being Deontay Johnson. You were brought here to be the dude to take the top off the offense, right? You had the highest separation rate in the league for wide receiver, and you come here and the ball's not even traveling 6 yards down the field. It's like, what am I here for? And then Adam Thielen, we saw him on Sunday get emotional after he missed him on that open route. I think Xavier Leggett only played a play or 2, like, which was weird to me. But then again, they weren't really going down the field. So what do you have a use for him for? Like, that kind of thing.
They've got to run the ball more. That's the thing that stuck out to me. And I know, like, the New Orleans game kind of got away from you a little earlier than you would have liked.
We're going to talk about New Orleans in just a minute.
You've got to establish the run, and that's the number one thing that can help a young quarterback, or any quarterback, really.
Quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, if you get going downhill and your defense starts playing well because they're more fresh, it just sounds so easy to do, right? But it's obviously a lot harder than it sounds. But the one thing that kind of stood out to me on Sunday is, like, you're looking at both sides of the ball, and I'm not going to name any certain players, but there is way too many guys on this team right now that are practice squad level players that have significant roles on this team, that if you put them on a playoff contender, they're on the practice squad.
That's a good point.
That's not necessarily, I'm not trying to knock these guys. I'm just saying, like, if you're evaluating talent, roster against roster, that's what they're dealing with right now. It's going to take time for this thing to turn. And that's the other issue that I have with this whole timeline thing, in that Dave on Sunday says Bryce is our quarterback, and that it's going to take us time it's going to take some time for us to be us. But then the next day, the Bryce thing comes out. And I get you can have a change of heart, but if you're so true about it's going to take time for us to be us, I mean, why 2 games?
Actually, we talked about that last night because I was like, actually, the way he said it made sense and it covered him because I think it was Sheena or somebody that asked him the question point blank, is Bryce going to be the starter on Sunday? And he didn't say Bryce was going to be a starter. He said Bryce is our quarterback. And I think he said that intentionally that way. So A, he doesn't lose Bryce, and B, he doesn't reveal his hand because I think he was already thinking that after the game yesterday. Like, how could he not be?
Y'all be listening to people's words like, boy, that's great.
But I'm scared. I'm like, is that what he mean? What's going on here?
The moment I knew that this was going to be a conversation was on that bubble where he just flat out missed Adam Thielen on the bowl screen. Like,
oh God, and like there's nobody out there, and Thielen's having to stretch to try to even get like that stuff can't happen. It just can't happen.
That's an easy play. It may only get 7 or 8 yards, but that completely changes the dynamic of what you're doing on the next down.
And that changes what your wide receivers are thinking, I would imagine, about the quarterback too, like going forward. And it just goes and goes and goes, and you get to the end point. I knew watching Thielen, Johnson being emotional, like on the field visibly, that this was probably the last. It had the same kind of feeling that San Francisco game did, the last Matt Rule game, where it was like a season finale. That's how it felt like. It was like, this feels like this is going to end one way or another by Monday somehow. We're either going to know definitively he's the starter the rest of the year, or they're going to bench him. I'm
not saying this is going to happen because I really don't believe, but I'm just curious to know what your guys' thoughts would be if this scenario plays out. Say Andy goes out there and he starts, right? He gets the start for the next 3 weeks. Looks like the same product. What's your reaction? What do you do?
I don't want to think about it yet.
Dave Canales on the clock. Apparently, based on the footprint of this team, since
I honestly think that
Andy
Dalton goes in this situation and balls out.
That's what I'm thinking. I don't think he can bottom out. I can't imagine Andy Dalton playing worse than Bryce Young has the first 2 games. Like, it just doesn't seem possible.
Offensive line is well, like, we got gasoline in that offensive line now.
Yeah, I think the offensive line, actually, that's been the one storyline no one's really talked about. We destroyed this offensive line all last year. And
Stu was on something there with Robert Hunt. That dude is a
dog.
Yeah. And you need that on that offensive line too. Like,
come here, boy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna block you.
I've walked by him numerous times, whether it's practice or locker room, and every time I'm just like, holy crap, that is a large
mountain.
Human.
That's a mountain.
That is a big dude.
When you have the ability to move
Robert
human
Hunt
being,
is a what do you call them? The 10 wonders. How many wonders in the world?
Yeah,
the 9th wonders, 9 wonders,
whatever.
Yeah. Robert Hunt is one of the wonders of the world. He's the 9th. Because that's actually a music group. Yeah, that's but, we'll call him the 10th wonder of the world, Robert Hunt. You are the 10th wonder of the world. Large human being.
It's open mailbag here at Bleav in Panthers, brought to you by Bet Online. You can let out your stuff here. Kieran Choi says, I think it would help if we also choose to receive the kickoff after coin tosses. Now that we've had 2 weeks of that, what are your thoughts on the kickoff returns? Because I've seen some teams just disregard it and just kick it into the end zone every time. And then I've seen some teams actually try to use it to their advantage and like try to play field position with it. It feels like if you have the right kicker, you can kind of really play with field position. But do you think they're going to keep this, or do you think they're going to switch it back to the old way? Because it feels like punt returns are now the most dangerous. Like,
this is all about player safety. Guys going down there, bashing their heads up against a wall, basically.
If they see data at the end of the season that shows significant decreases in injuries, it's not going back.
Yeah, and I think if teams figure it out, I don't think they'll want to go back, because you can actually mess around, start off with like the 45 or something like that, like if whatever combo happens or whatever. So I do have a video from Dave Canales, again from yesterday, before we get to Around the League, as we're here on Bleav in Panthers. This was Dave basically describing how the team, he's not worried about the team rallying around Andy Dalton as he becomes the new starting quarterback here, probably for the foreseeable future.
I expect the same support for Andy as we go into this week, for the guys to be supportive and every day just to approach it with that kind of energy.
Will Bryce be the number 2 this week?
Yes.
You'll be bringing another quarterback?
Not right now.
Do you plan on making any other adjustments to the roster?
Probably. I think it's every single week we're evaluating our roster. We're challenging all spots. We're looking to just be as competitive as possible. And that's the part that we owe, again, to everybody, is to really continue to evaluate who we have out there and who can help us.
That
right there.
to,
Listen, everybody just be quiet.
Get him, Stu. Get him.
Sound off.
Everybody just be quiet, man.
Tell
Look,
them why you mad.
Listen,
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you why
everybody,
we
this
messing.
is
I'm
a
gonna tell you why
coach
we
that wants.
messing.
This is just a coach that wants to win. He's here to do one job and one job only, and it's to win football games. Like, you cannot have an emotional attachment when you walk into that stadium. I'm sorry, it's a business, because his job's on the line. He has a family. The coaches that he's brought in, they have families. The players in that locker room, they have families. Okay, right, wrong, or indifferent, the decision has been made. This man is they are evaluating every single day. I remember, like, my first several years playing for the Carolina Panthers, I was going through a lot of injuries. And I would have spurts of games here and there, very inconsistent because of injuries. But lo and behold, 2000, 15, I started getting healthy. I started getting confident. And luckily, I had an organization that believed in my potential and saw the potential in me to stick around, right? It's going to take some time for certain players to develop.
Yeah.
And those players will be on this team, right? And some guys just won't have it, right? And they'll be gone. And that's just the nature of the business.
Yep.
Because every day, practice, games, locker room energy, whatever it is, you're being evaluated. And if you're in that building, it's because they believe that you can help them advance and win games and hopefully make the playoffs, win in the playoffs, and hopefully get to another Super Bowl. That is the bottom line, only reason why football is the greatest sport amongst humanity, because it is a team-oriented game. You have to figure out how to put the best product on the field every week. And when you are able to detach yourself emotionally, I mean, he's coming from a Pete Carroll, right? Understudy, right? And Pete Carroll played the best guys, period. He made sure that he had the best guys on the field at all points and at all times. And so that comment, or his comments there, like, I'm not mad at that press conference. I'm not mad at his reasoning. I'm all for it. And I can say that as a fan, right? Now, if I'm in the locker room, I got to tighten up. If I'm in the locker room, I got to tighten up, because this new regime is all about business. Got to handle your business. This is not sending a scare. This is not a scare tactic. It's just the reality. The reality is we have to win football games, or we all going to be out of here. We all going to be out of a job.
That's the way it should be.
And that's the way it should be. The sense of urgency. Now, the decision making going forward, as far as the coaching staff, as far as players and all that, it has to make sense, and it has to level out and not be undermined by doing something that goes against what you're talking about, right? I don't know, man. I'm not, I feel bad for Bryce, period. I feel bad for him individually. I don't think he had the best situation, getting drafted, the best support. And I wish that, confidence-wise, he would have been able to rally and rally himself. And there's still time for that. And so, again, the evaluation doesn't just stop with Bryce Young being benched today. He's going to continue to be evaluated, because guess what? They still got practice.
Yeah.
They still have meeting time.
Season goes on.
The season goes on.
No, and nobody's sad
They
for
might
Carolina.
continue to lose. He might end up getting another shot. Right?
do
We've
agree,
never
but
seen
he needs to stay ready.
this story before. We've
Yeah.
never seen this story before, which gives it a good opportunity, a good chance for it to be a really good story at the end, given the situation, right? We've never seen a guy get benched, first round draft pick starter, get benched his second year, 2 games into the season, and then maybe he gets a second shot in that same season and saves the day. Me as a football player, me as an athlete, those are the stories that go on in my brain. Those are the things that I'm always rooting for. The impossible. Do the impossible. If you don't think this is possible, just sit back and watch. Because I can guarantee you, every athlete that you see on TV has been told you can't do it. It won't happen. And I'm pretty sure he's been told that all his life. And so hopefully this is an opportunity for him to gain his confidence back and get an opportunity to show people why he is the #1 draft pick for a reason.
You're right. I don't think that it was a scare tactic by any means, but it does send, like you said, it makes you tighten up because it's like, well, dang, like if they're going to bench the #1 pick that quickly into his tenure, like they're going to be willing to bench anybody. So you got to show up. And I do think in some way, like you said, it's no scare tactic, but it does send a message that, hey, if you put out a bad product on the field, you're going to lose your role. And that's okay. That's what this job's about. It's a results-oriented business.
Especially if you have someone that's backing you up that might be able to go out there and perform.
And that has in the past.
I'll just say with the Dave Canales comments or whatever, while I do feel bad for Bryce Young to a certain extent, I feel better for myself as a Carolina Panther fan. Because not for real, because like if he was gonna, it's one thing to baby Bryce Young and just leave him out there for 17 games and be like, well, he's got to learn, throw him in the deep end. We kind of did that last year, and it made sense last year because last year the roster was younger, like it was younger dudes, it was like kind of spare parts, like you're all in it together. This roster isn't that. This roster is not built for that. Like this roster is built to compete right now, and if you can't compete because you don't have quarterback play, and Canales is recognizing this early, the fans need to back off. Like there's fans are basically like, Dave Canales is in over his head. You don't know what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. This tells me the complete opposite, that he's in total control of this roster. He knows exactly what he wants to do, and he's not going to let anyone, including the owner, basically get in the middle of him completing the plan of what he basically proposed that got him the job in the first place. Like he's not attached to Bryce Young. He doesn't have to be attached to Bryce Young. And I think this move proves to everybody he's not going to baby Bryce Young. His job is to win football games. And after 6 years of the David Tepper ownership regime having this franchise, I would think that David Tepper would like to win some football games too. And if it means that he ended up being wrong on a kid he wanted to pick #1 overall and they gave up a whole lot to get him, so be it. That David Tepper can change too. Like that kind of thing where people were like, this is a David Tepper move. David Tepper's meddling again. He can't be paid. We have no idea. We don't know who decided to do this other than what Dave Canales has told us. And we have zero reason to Bleav that Dave Canales is a liar or a used car salesman that we've had previously here. Like he seems pretty refreshingly at that, a pretty honest guy. Like he pretty much tells us what he's doing. Like, and he explains it. That's kind of his thing with the players. He's very open in terms of what his plans are and like why you're doing certain things. And it seems like he's that way with the press too, that he explains to you guys, this is why we did this. And he did that in that press conference. So to me, while the players on one hand might look at it like, oh, you can bench the #1 overall pick, I mean, that means anybody can get got. I'm also looking at it like, we've been watching the tape too. We don't want to tell Bryce to his face that this has been trash, but we see it. We're out there on the field with him. Like he's not completing like 3-yard outs. Like we got to do something because we got to be out here for 15 games too. And we want to win football games too. And I got to think deep down in their mind are like, he did this early, but he might have just saved our season. He might have saved my job because now I'm going to have the opportunity to go out there and get some better tape because we're going to be playing better. Like I'll be playing better. My guy beside me will be playing better. We have some sort of conviction on what we're doing as opposed to waiting on Bryce to catch up to the rest of us. And again, Bryce might end up here later on. He may not, but we said this a little bit earlier in the pod. I was looking through the roster. Is there a player on this roster that we could trade for a second-round pick right now?
JC probably be the only one, but
with his injury history, like I don't know. Like, and that's why I'm sitting like, I don't think there is. Even Bryce. I don't know if there is at this moment. If there's a player that we could trade up for a 2. And
That's what I mean. When you have a lot of guys that are in roles that they probably wouldn't be in other situations. But
I'm feeling, yeah.
I'm not trying to knock these guys. Like, I'm really not. But it's just kind of the situation you're in. Like, if we're going to be honest about it, like, they are in a rebuild right now. It wasn't like Canales just came in, they added some guys, and it was, let's take off and let's go win the NFC South. That's the goal. But even in the front office, they know that this is going to not be something that takes place overnight. This is going to be a process. They're going to have to build through the draft. They're going to have to keep guys. They're going to develop guys. They have to, and I put this in my article on Sunday after the game. If you're a team that lacks depth, you still have a chance if you have a top-heavy roster. This team does not have a top-heavy roster.
No, not yet.
So if you don't have a top-heavy roster and you lack depth, this is what you see.
Let's move on real quick to around the league, because I do want to get to a quick Panthers Raiders preview now that we know who the quarterback's going to be for the Carolina Panthers. That's Sunday. It's a late start, 4:05 p.m. I said Fox last week. It was on CBS. I think it's CBS again. I got to check it real quick. I'll try to check it before we get out of here. But before we do that, I want to do around the league. Let's get out of Panther talk for just a second. Everybody get out of mud, brush it off your legs. Yeah, shake it off. Let's look around. I wanted to get from you guys, who's your biggest surprise team that's either 2-0 or 0-2 going into week 3 of the regular season? And if you need me to pull up the NFL standings courtesy of NFL.com, I can do that. Oh, whoops. Maybe I can. I'm hitting all kinds of the wrong buttons here. But if you already have one that you already know that you want to use, we can do that as well. But do I want to go first? Let me hear what you guys got. As I pull up the standings here, and I'll scroll through them as you guys go through. So your biggest surprise, either 2-0 team or 0-2 team. Some good ones to choose from here.
Yeah, go through that right quick. In my brain.
I'd say probably the Saints or the Vikings would
I was
probably
going
be
with the Saints for 2-0 for me. Yeah, I was going
I'll say the Vikings.
I'm probably in that category too.
Sam Darnold. The Vikings, they've scored 51 points in 2 games. They've only allowed 23.
Yeah.
They're won a game on the road and one at home. 2 NFC games at that. Sam Darnold kind of balling, man. Wouldn't Sam the number 2 overall pick in his draft?
What's that?
Wasn't Sam the number 2 overall pick in his draft?
2 or 3.
He was up there. Yeah.
I can't remember. Yeah.
So he's balling. That was your pick, Minnesota?
Yeah.
What about you, Stu?
Yeah, Minnesota.
You're going with Minnesota as well?
Yeah.
I'm going to pick our own division. I was going with New Orleans to begin with, but I forgot Tampa's 2-0 too. I'm
not too surprised about Tampa.
Really?
No. I mean, them beating Detroit was like, okay. Like,
that was the easiest bet on the board last week.
It was basically kind of like last year. They played Detroit last year.
In the playoffs. Yeah.
Playoffs. And so this was kind of like a way of being able to have film from last year and the things you did wrong and an opportunity to do it right type of game, in my opinion. So a little bit of revenge game. And I think Tampa, is expected to be competitive in my mind throughout the NFL this year.
They did win the division last year. So
yeah,
I guess that's not too much of a shock. New Orleans stands out like a sore thumb. Like,
yeah, them boys. Alvin Kamara coming out here with a vengeance,
bro. Alvin Kamara looks like 2018 Alvin Kamara. Like, what
boy,
the hell did he do?
Balance, his contact balance is like, the way Alvin Kamara runs the ball, he runs the ball like he's just unbothered. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, I mean, he didn't touch the first 6-7 yards. He's got the ball in his hand.
You just hit me, but it doesn't matter. I'm still running full speed.
He runs
Man, you can't really grab me, so it's okay.
Look at their point differential. They've scored 91 points in the first 2 games. Half of that was on us. And then the 29
but then the other half was on Dallas.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, because I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's just us. Maybe we didn't know we were doing opening week. But I was pretty high on Dallas after opening week 2. And then for
these indicators the indicators here kind of make me feel like, we lost to a good team.
That's what I'm holding. That's what I'm like.
And
Maybe
then-
these teams were better than we thought they were going to.
And then the Chargers beat the Raiders. The Raiders beat Baltimore.
Dude, Jim Harbaugh has a 70% win percentage in the NFL as an NFL coach. He's won like
Is that good?
40, he's like 45. He's like 45-17 or something like that in regular season. So like, I felt like them coming in. Oh, they're going to run for 200 yards, but then we're not going to be able to stop it. Justin Herbert will complete stuff when he needs to. Like they're going to make Justin Herbert better just by not having the ball in his hands so much. Like they're literally going to just run jumbo
J.K.
all
Dobbins is
year.
a dog, boy.
Yeah, he's
Good
man.
Lord.
Chargers.
Homeboy did a backflip into the.
He did.
Yeah, that boy, a front
Yeah.
flip. That boy was like, all right, this is my opportunity for branding. Here we go. Front flip.
Chargers are a shock to it, 2-0. They've only allowed 13 points in 2 games. That might be the best in the league, actually. Now, I think it is the best in the league. Well,
I know it's easy to stare at Baltimore and Cincinnati, but they both have had to play Kansas City.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I think the bigger disappointment was just Cincinnati losing that Week 1 game to New England.
And I would say the biggest disappointment is Baltimore losing to the Raiders so far.
Are you surprised Baltimore's 0-2?
Yeah, I'm surprised they're 0-2. I think they should have beat the Raiders, but I think the Bengals loss to New England's a worse loss.
Yeah.
But the Jacksonville Jaguars is kind of another one that no one really talks about. That them being 0-2 is kind of like,
Who was it yesterday? I saw
Trevor Lawrence.
They were saying about Trevor Lawrence. Was it Rex Ryan? I think it was Rex Ryan. He was saying that Trevor Lawrence is the worst, best quarterback in the league. Like he's literally, we always put him in that best category of like the top 12 or 13, but he's always 12 or 13. Like he hasn't gotten. And he said Doug Peterson's the same way. He's like the worst, best coach in the NFL.
but
like,
you can win. You can win with those guys.
You win with him.
Alex Smith, you could put him in that category for many years.
Yeah.
He was the worst, best quarterback, and he won a ton of games.
Man, you remember when Clemson had Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence was his backup? Like, you remember it feels like a lifetime ago. Like when that was going on. Hey, shout out to Deshaun Watson. He actually played a really good game week 2, and Cleveland won that game. They're 1-1. Maybe we wrote off Deshaun Watson a little too fast.
I definitely think we wrote him off too fast. My bad, Deshaun.
Who did Cleveland beat Sunday? I can't remember. It was on TV. I just can't remember what it was. Oh, before we get out of around the league, I did want to touch on this. Tua, Miami. He's getting another opinion, I believe I'd heard. It's his 4th concussion in like
3 years.
3 years. So Panther fans, the only thing I can think of that would be similar to it that we have seen as fans would be Luke Kuechly, I guess, having the concussion. And he knew enough wherewithal to be like, you know what, I'm getting out while I can still, do things. And which great for him because he's a brilliant defensive mind. And I hope that one day the Panthers, it would make a lot of sense to offer him, hey, you want to come in here and do this defense?
He's busy right now. He's coaching our middle school football team.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he's got other obligations. He's like, no, Carolina. I got this other thing going on. Y'all gonna have to get on the waiting list because how do you defend a Luke Kuechly defense in middle school? Like, what are you supposed to do?
What is y'all's record right now, Stu?
Yeah,
we are 1-1.
All right. Okay.
So just think about this. Some dude out there got this on his resume that he beat a coaching staff.
Yeah, but they only scored 8 points.
Oh God! Jeez.
But he's got it on his resume. That's hanging up.
I had a rock fight with them. I had a rock fight with them boys.
They run the wing tee. People that
middle school,
people that run wing tee.
Spread things out.
Man, there's still some high schools around here that run that thing hardcore. Like if you don't know how to defend
soft players, man, they ain't gonna make it to college. They ain't gonna get to college. They're gonna get to college and get beat up.
Oh man,
that's why our coach in high school. Well, we don't even run this crap.
People mentioned Dan Morgan actually had a bunch of concussions. That
yeah, man.
His retirement.
The concussion thing, man, is serious because if you don't take care of what's up, you don't take care of your brain, it's the thing that keeps you going, man. And you have to be smart. I mean, he's had the help around him. He had an off season that's basically been dedicated to shedding weight so that way he can maneuver better and just protect himself from situations like, taking a blow to the head. Some guys are just more prone to concussions. The DNA, how you're made, and when you start getting one, when you get one, you're more
Like
prone to
another
get more. And say what?
And it's like another one just follows right after that.
Yeah, and so you have to be mindful. I mean, you got kids, and I know a lot of people have already been talking about it, and it's a no-brainer as far as how serious this is. But ultimately, it's going to be up to him, and hopefully, he has people in his corner that are pulling for him in the right way. If it was me, 4 concussions is enough, especially the ones that he's experienced, to where his body legitimately, suffers from being.
That's the thing for me. Like,
yeah,
I mean, concussions of all sorts are bad.
Yeah,
but it seems like every single one of his is visually painful to see.
And it's always on national TV, like when it happens too. So it's like,
and
the whole country's watching it.
Like I heard Teddy Bruschi talk about his situation where he had a stroke at 31.
Yeah.
Right. So these are things that you do not want happening to you. I mean, you are well paid. If you had to retire medically, you're still going to get paid. You just won't be able to chase, whatever dreams and aspirations that you may have had. But there's a lot of good things that you've already achieved. You've been the leading passer in the NFL. You've been an All-Pro. You've been a Heisman winner. You've won a national championship. There's a lot of things that you can look back at your career and say, man, I've done enough. Now it's time for me to move on. That would just be me, because I played 11 years in the league, and I've definitely had concussions. I probably had 2 that I've definitely felt like, oh, but man,
you knew.
I got my whole right side of my body stinging, right? And my vision's blurry or whatever it is. And like even now, like the things I experience, everybody with age experiences like memory loss. Like, oh, where am I at? I'm in the car. but like there's some moments in time where I'm just kind of like, dang, I'm at home. I just got home. I don't remember the drive home, right? And that's just from age. That's from playing football, whatever you want to call it. It's gonna happen. Your brain's gonna deteriorate naturally as you get older. And for him, I don't want him to suffer, being 50 and having to, have these moments where he is suffering at an age where he doesn't need to be suffering, because he decides to continue on and put his brain and his body through the ringer.
The money's going to be a big deal too, because he just signed. He just got a bag in the offseason. I was reading through it. It depends on how they determine the injury or something, because he's got guaranteed money in there, even if he does have injury. But it has to be done in a certain way or something. I don't know the specifics of it. So
yeah, if you retire medically, they will still take care of you.
Yeah. So, I mean, so he doesn't have to worry about losing out on that per se. And I think the majority of people are just like, he needs to do it. I understand the whole, it's his choice, his decision. I don't understand the people that are like thinking that people are trying to push him into retirement. I think they just don't want to see the man get seriously injured on the field on national TV. Like, nobody wants to see that. Like, nobody wants a Hamlin type moment, the kid from Buffalo, that kind of thing. You just don't want to see that. Like, and with Tua, the last one could have been avoided. He already got the first down. I don't know what he was doing. He just lowered his head and tried to run into the defender. Slide, man. Like slide. You already have concussions on your resume. Like, and I get it. He's a football player who's used to the time. He was, you're in the middle of the moment. So I totally get all that. But hopefully he'll get the right medical advice and can make the right decision for him and his family. Real quick before we get out of here, Bleav in Panthers, the one where Bryce gets benched, part 2. You can see part 1 where we go more in depth about Bryce and how it might affect his career and his the Panthers and everything else. That's available right now on all podcast platforms through Bleav, and the video is available right here where you are on YouTube at youtube.com/@Tobacco Road Sports Radio. Panthers Raiders coming up here this Sunday. The Panthers' first trip to the West Coast this season. I'm gonna try to get some info here for you in terms of what it's not. Okay, so I'm trying to get more info about. It's 4:05 p.m. kickoff. Still can't find what channel this thing is on. Do you know if it's on Fox or CBS? Because last week it was on CBS, and I was telling people that it was on Fox. But it's an AFC team, so I'm not sure. I'll double check all of it.
College is in full swing, and those I mean, everything
Thoughts on this game?
is-
The Raiders are favored by 7 as it stands right now. Going into this matchup, it's a home game. Gardner Minshew has played okay going into this, but I'm not like concerned by any means. Zamir White, the running back, I'm familiar with him. He came out of North Carolina, actually, Scotland County High School. He was one of the top. I think he was the top running back in the country. And when he came out, he went to Georgia. So familiar with him. Thoughts on this matchup? Now that you got Andy Dalton starting for the Panthers, let's do our 3 keys. What's your key for the Panthers to come out of here with a victory finally in the 2024 season on the road against the Raiders? Who wants to set it off?
I'll go first because I got to hop off here real quick. But mine is take shots. Feel confident with Andy. You did last time, or last year staff did with him starting the Seattle game. And I think he threw it like 50 sometimes. So I don't suggest that. Like I said earlier, I think you need to establish a run game. That's something they haven't been able to do. Get both Chuba and Miles involved, which will help Andy out. So I think the goal in this, run for $110. You run for $110, it opens up everything, and it slows the game down. I don't think you want to play with an up-tempo type of pace. You don't want to get into a back and forth with Gardner Minshew. They'll throw it all day long. That's not the type of game you want to get into. So I think you got to slow it down, force a turnover. I mean, it sounds like the same stuff we say every week, but we haven't seen them execute the simple things yet. So run for $110, help Andy out. Peace, y'all.
All right, man. I would say to echo that, run the ball, because you got to run the ball and basically give yourself a chance to get your defense some rest and not have them on the field so much. Last week we had 40-something plays. We didn't convert on third downs. So I think running the ball and execute and just being able to depend on those short yardage opportunities and converting would be huge. So, I want Chuba to have 18 carries at least. And Miles right there with him. I think we need to just basically go out and establish the physicality of what this team needs to be. Tough football players that are smart. And so no penalties. I'm looking at this game and saying you have to basically go in and have a clean game. Have a clean game. Because 9 penalties last game for 90 yards, that's basically a whole field.
Yeah.
And if you look at that, that's a whole touchdown you're giving to your opponent based off of field position. So I'm saying that. And then defensively, we were able to get to the quarterback a little bit this past game against the Chargers and cause some ruckus, for Herbert. I would like for us to be able to do the same for the Raiders, because I don't think they don't run the ball as well as the last 2 teams that we played. So being able to stop the run will give you an opportunity to earn the right to chase the quarterback. And so I would love for us to be able to cause some ruckus.
That's where I'm going to, and that's where we're going to end it. I need to see a pass rush from the Panthers this Sunday. I need the Raiders to be worried about where Jadeveon Clowney is, like because it feels like he's hadn't really flashed the first 2 games because we were having anything on the other side of him to kind of force the issue. And I know we don't have Derek Brown. We're not going to have Derek Brown. He's not walking through the door this season, so we got to move on. We got to figure this out. There's enough talent on this defense to start to build here. And I hope the defense takes this as a reset too, that the season isn't over. And if anything, it's a vote of confidence in the coaching staff and the front office that they feel like they have enough to compete for a playoff spot this with the roster they have assembled. And I think they do. And honestly, in a weaker NFC, the AFC is loaded. The NFC, we struggled to come up with 7 teams to make the playoffs in the NFC. Now, that might have been wrong with the Saints and the Bucks and the Vikings getting off the 2-0 starts, and we'll see. But for us, there's still plenty of time in the season to figure this out. And I don't think we are what the national media is portraying us, which is just hopeless, like we're just lost. Because it feels like a lot of times people comment about the Panthers and don't watch the Panthers. I was seeing people talk about how, oh, they benched Bryce, but he don't have an offensive line. He does have an offensive line this year. Like, that shows me you haven't been watching the games. That's not why he got benched, like stuff like that. So I want the Panthers to use this overall as a team, offense, defense, special teams, to turn the whole thing around. I want to see a different product than what we've seen the past 2 weeks. I do feel like it was Bryce Young flavored. Like the what we saw, it was a trickle down effect of the way Bryce was playing, which is crazy even on defense. But I feel like the same thing can happen in reverse with Dalton coming in. The backup quarterback's usually the most popular player on the team, especially when things are going bad. And now he's going to be able to start. And it's not a home game. It's a road game that he can start off with, where he's not worried about missing this pass, missing that pass. The crowd changes on you all of a sudden.
And sometimes it's good to have those away games as like a focus point, right? Because when you're going on an away game, you have to focus way more, and you have the ability to have less distractions outside of the noise when you go into that game, right? But the preparation, the flight, right? You have to be somewhere on time. You have to be at the hotel on time. You have to tune in to, a schedule and all those types of things. So as a player, you're actually more attuned to what you're doing on an away trip, whereas you're more comfortable, you're more relaxed on a home game. And so if you're looking for a turnaround, it could definitely be done, with that in mind. On a away trip.
So we'll stop it right there. Panthers Raiders 4:05 p.m. kickoff Sunday. I Bleav it's a Fox kickoff. If not, then just go over to the other channel, CBS.
Just go through your channels. Get YouTube TV.
That way you watch them all. And hopefully we'll be talking about a Panthers victory Tuesday when we come back in here next week. For Schuyler Callihan, for Jonathan Stewart, I'm Desmond Johnson. You've been watching and listening to the Bleav in Panthers podcast here on Bleav Podcast Networks, brought to you by Bet Online. Let's go Panthers. Keep pounding.